In any case, before I go on, I'll go with a marketing guidebook and tell you just a little bit about ourselves. So, we are a privately held company, and as you can see, we've been around for quite some time in this field. In fact, I think that 10 years is more or less the tipping point where virtualization turned from some marketing buzzword into a technology people actually started using on a wider scale. Other than that, all of our technologies are our own because we are, well, an R&D company. And being an R&D company, we have been R&Ding, I guess, in the last couple of years, our latest product called Ceedo Desktop, which, as I said, is a layering solution, which is really just a fancy way of saying that we are playing at the realms of desktop and end-user environment management tool. So, enough introduction, and let's start. Now, I've personally been in this field since 2006, coming from AppVirt specifically, and it's interesting that if you, for instance, go back to any article or even brochure that was written, let's say 7 or 8 years ago, you'll see that as far as the needs and constraints of desktop management go, nothing really changed much. I mean, the technology evolved and cool new tools were invented, but in reality, if you look at the stuff put out by companies promoting their latest what's-a-thingy, you see that they still address the same problems and sort of even make the same promises, which are all centered around these three subjects here. So, first of all, how do we deploy a single OS image to all of our endpoints? Because if we can do that, then we need to manage only one OS image. Then, once we've done that, how can we flavor the endpoints with centrally stored applications, but without polluting our endpoints? And then, after we've dealt with OS and application delivery, how can we then also allow users to have everything from their profile, but also their own installed apps, kept separately from the OS they're working on? Now, these issues are sort of global problems in the enterprise desktop market, but what's interesting is that when you put it in the context of VDI, it reflects beautifully on the stateless versus stateful VDI debate. Now, just as a reminder, stateful architecture, which is not what you see here, more or less means that you just beamed your old physical PCs into your data center, which, let's be honest, more or less means that you took your old headaches from the physical world and added the new ones of EDI. On the other hand, the stateless architecture, also known as the sort of VDI Holy Grail, which is what you do see here, means that you have only one OS image, which then spawns a bunch of clones that then wait like floating in the air, waiting for some random user to log on. And then once he does, your environment should provide him with everything that he needs. So, given current technologies, and I'm talking about, the most widely used technologies, how would you go about doing something like this? Okay, so in this slide, I have my two basic architectures. At the bottom, I have our great, easy to manage, cost-effective stateless architecture, and at the top, our less great, not so easy to manage, and let's be honest, not really cost-effective stateful architecture. And in between, we have the two main technologies that we can use in order to achieve what we saw in the last slide. Namely, we have application virtualization, which will flavor the image with applications at the instant of logon. Then we have user virtualization, which is really just a fancy way of saying roaming profiles, which will allow the users to have some sort of persistence. Unfortunately, coming down from marketing IT La La Land, we crash land into IT reality because app virtualization will only cover about 75% of apps, so you'd probably need more than one OS image already. Probably one per department or something like that. And again, coming from AppVirt myself, you don't even want to get me started about app packaging pains and the hours I spent with customers about that. So you see why I pushed it there to the pricey side. And what about user virtualization? Well, here we have a different problem because by definition, this type of persistence alone cannot fit anyone else other than basic task workers, because by definition, it cannot capture apps. So any of you, or someone like me for that matter, will get a huge blow to our productivity, and its user experience is simply nowhere close to that of stateful VDI. And so it seems that even our most advanced tools and technologies cannot break the age-old IT truism that if you want to make both IT and management and those pesky users happy, it will take at least a year and $1 million to do. And then another year and $1 million to replace it with something that actually works. But what would actually work? Well, in a dream IT world with cybernetic unicorns and servers made of rainbows, what you would expect to have is this: a single solution with a single management console based on a single technology that can easily, with no bells and whistles, no marketing eye candies or dependencies, take non-persistent and non-dedicated VMs and flavor them on the fly, not only with the user profile, but also with the user installed applications, and at the same time allow you to deploy all the applications the user requires, including the 25% of applications you cannot virtualize. On top of that, it should also allow you to independently update your golden image, and it should work on log on as if the machine was booted in this state. So how would you achieve something like that, technically? Well, conceptually, what you'll need to do is somehow capture everything you have going on in the OS, similar to what you have with child or differencing disks, but at the same time make it as modular as roaming profiles are. So you'd need something that will capture everything the OS is attempting to read or write, everything, and move it to some separate disk. But instead of storing the data at the non-modular block level, you'll have to store it in discrete files and registry keys, similar to how user profiles are stored. Now, if you also want to support those 25% of apps you cannot virtualize, you'll have to move out of the user mode of the OS and dig into the kernel mode. And then on top of that, if you want it to work on log on, you'll need to somehow convince Windows that whatever drivers and services you threw at the desktop were there even before the user logged on. So Windows needs to believe that the machine was booted in that state. And only once you've done all of that will your stateless VDI be able to serve all of your users and be fast to integrate and easy to manage. So how would you call something like that? You can be fancy, like this slide title here, and call it Modular Desktop Composition. But if that sounds a little too techish for you, you can just call it Ceedo Desktop, because that's exactly what we do. You just slide us into your environment no matter what hypervisor or broker you're using. And once a user logs on, his departmental applications will be fetched on the fly along with his user profile and his user installed applications, and everything will be merged with a random clone of one single golden image that you can then update again and again as you go along. But we also wanted to make it a little bit fun. So we added this little extra IT tools box there. And okay, I'll give you 2 examples. On the simple side of things, let's say you want to keep things simple. So you have a bunch of good old MSI packages. You've had them for ages. They're working since the physical machine world was good. So we have this really neat pre and post logon script engine, and it actually runs at really high elevation, and it can actually run even before the session actually starts. So they're very, very powerful. So if you want, you can simply use those MSIs, install them directly into the user disk, even before the user managed to get his session ready. But my favorite example, and this one was actually, okay, so it's one of our developers, one of our genius Russian mathematician developers, and he figured this one out. he said, okay, I'm going to take Ceedo Desktop and I'm going to make it capture only a single folder, specifically Visual Studio's compilation temp directory. And then, using our internal disk mounting system, he made the user layer load into RAM, which is one of the things that our disk system can do. So when he compiled stuff, he got everything organically compiled in a RAM disk, and the guy from Atlantis here can tell us how great that makes things. So basically, what we did is create an environment that doesn't only solve the three main goals we spoke about of desktop management, but also tries to really speak to IT guys. And you can tweak with it and you can play around with it. Many of the stuff that we have today built into our system are actually tweaks that IT guys made that we liked so much, we just integrated them into the product. And again, you get all these things built around the basic proposition that by sliding Ceedo Desktop into your environment, you get to give users the ability to install their own apps and have their own profile, deploy apps, including those 25% of applications you cannot virtualize, have everything running on pre-running and non-dedicated VMs. You also get to retain the ability to update your golden image, so you have only one single golden image for the entire company. And last but not least, you get to manage everything from one single management console, which is wrapped in a suite of tools that allow you to do things that really even we can't always imagine. So, with that, I'll leave you with an invitation to come to our booth and chat with us a little. And of course, visit our website at ceedodesktop.com. That's it. That was quick, right?